Welcome to the next video in the series Photoshop CS5 for architecture students. In this video we're going to go through some simple colour fills and the use of the clipping mask, but also some effects with the layering that help with composition when we're using colour. Now I'm going to go and work on my section through here, so I'm going to zoom in on that. Now, two things I'm going to do. I want to highlight the section, so I'm going to colour that, and then I also want to put a fill in this background elevation. Now, very simple way of applying colour. Now, I'm just going to get a colour from my colour picker over here. I'll select that pale warm brown. It's loaded up into the colour tool. Now I'm going to just pick the tool, the paint bucket tool. Now what that's going to do is that it'll just flood colour in an area that's bounded by a defined line or a defined region. So I'm going to work on this area here first, fill that. Oops. What we can see here is that obviously there's a break in the line somewhere because it's accidentally bled out and filled into this area through here. So I'm going to undo that, Control Z, and zoom in to the area that seems to be causing the problem, and I think it's probably bleeding through there. Now to avoid that bleeding of colour, a few things we can do is make sure that when we do the drawing in the first instance, the line work is nice and crisp, and that the scanning is done as best quality as possible. Now I'm going to have to fix this up. Now there's probably two ways of doing this. If I had a steady hand, I could probably draw a line with the pencil through here. I can bring the size of this right down and draw it through there. Let's bring this down to 1 pixel. Oops, I've got the wrong colour. I'm going to sample the line. Now I'm going to sample the line, and I'm going to make sure I've got the point sample so I'll get exactly that black colour. So I'm going to get the pencil and just fill in that line a little bit. Okay, so there we go. Colour that a little bit more. Zoom out a bit to try and get to that same extent. Now I'm going to go back to pick that pale warm brown from my swatches, go back to my paint bucket, flood that area, and voila, it's actually now filled to the region that I want it to. Now the only issue is that when we start to fill this, you notice that if we zoom in, it's bleeding a little bit into the line work, and so as we fill the region between the lines, it's tending to wash out our line work at the same time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in time, undo those fills, and what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to center the image. I'm going to make a copy of the section, and this copy will help preserve the line work of the section. So to copy it, I'm going to copy this layer. Now in the flyout from the panel, I'm going to go duplicate layer, and I'm going to call this section line work. Okay, so there's my drawing section line work sitting there above my section. So I'm going to turn that off just temporarily, go back to my section through here. Now I'm going to go back, and I'm going to just go back and fill all of those areas of the section through there, so we can see clearly the portal frame that is in the cut section. Let's just zoom out on that. Yep, and it looks like I've caught most of that section through there. Note that these parts of the section are in the background in elevation, so I'm not going to colour those for clarity. So I've got my fill done. It's all in the section area. Now if I turn my section line work on, it's actually covered the section. The reason is because it's sitting above it. But if we recall, we can change the layer properties of this and make that section line work appear that it's like on a piece of tracing paper. So I'm going to go up here, change that layer property to multiply. And so what we have now is an overlay of the line work from before on top of the section. So you can see the difference. If I turn the section line work off, the line work is a bit more washed out. But if I turn the overlay, that's using a multiply setting on the layers, it actually makes the line work crisp again. It's because it's overlaying a second version of that section. So that's going to print out a lot better, and it's going to avoid this section looking washed out. Now I'm going to add in a colour wash over this area here. Now if we look at the plan, this is the area here that we're going to put the colour on. We notice there's a window here, and looking up above here, there's a window on the upper level as well. We can see that north is off to this side. So we can safely assume that in the section that light is going to wash in here from the left to the right. So to give us perhaps a little bit more realism, I'm going to put a graduated colour fill in this area to give the appearance that there's light washing down over that wall. Now I'm going to make the graduated fill as a separate layer, because if I do a normal fill in this section, I'm not going to get that even graduation across here, because it's going to want to fill just within these regions. So what I need to do is to define a fill area that isn't the actual line work of the drawing itself. So before I go much further, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call this section graduated colour. Okay, it's not too long the name, we can still read it through there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that in this layer, which I've made active now, I'm going to define a region that I'm going to fill in through there. Now I'm going to use the polygon lasso tool for this. Now what this allows me to do is to create an irregular shaped region. Now I'm going to define the region. I'm going to start at this corner, click to the corner there, click to the corner there, click to the corner there, click here, and double click to finish. Now notice through here I haven't quite got all the area I want. Now I don't need to panic and redo the whole lot, but what I can do is I can add to that selection. To do that then I just hold the shift key down, and you can see a little plus sign appears. What this means is that it's adding extra area to that selection. So I'm just going to select that extra area, double click, and there you can see I'm going to do the same through here, the top, double click. I'm going to zoom in the top there, there's a strange little area, shift key, there we go. Now I'm going to control minus to zoom out. Okay, so there's the area. I'm going to hold the spacebar to pan. Now in the lower area here as well, this part of the wall, this is like a bench top, will also have light washing against it. So I'm going to add to the selection here as well. Now this is a bit more of a regular shape, so I'm going to use my rectangular marquee. I'm going to hold the Shift key down to add to the selection. You can see the little plus there. I'm going to pull that down, and there we go. So this region here is the region that I'm going to colour. Now, if we do a lot of this kind of manipulation in detail, we don't want to always have to redefine the selection areas. Perhaps I want to come back to this selection and change the colour. Now, I can actually save a series of selections so that when I undo the marquee, I can recall it again. And how I can do that is if I go into the application, the pull-down menu, select, I can go right down the bottom here and go Save Selection. So I'm going to call this selection Section Background Fill. Go OK. So that's saved it in Photoshop land somewhere. Now I'm going to go Control D and clear that selection. Now if I want to recall that selection again, I can come up here, go Select. I can now load that selection, look at the channel, pull that down, and voila, there we have Section Background Fill. OK, and there we have our selection back again. OK, so now I'm going to do that fill. I'm going to use a slightly different colour this time. I'm going to use this, what colour is that? Light cool brown, pale cool brown. I'll use the pale cool brown. There we go. Now I'm going to use, instead of a bucket fill, I'm going to use a gradient fill. So I'm going to use the gradient tool, which is in the paint bucket flyout. I'm going to select that, and you can see at the top there I'm going to be filling from left to right. Now if, for example, the window was on the other side, I could change that by hitting the reverse, in which case the gradient will work the other way. Now I'm going to hit reverse because I do want the light to come from the left to the right. So to make the fill, simply what I do is I draw a line from left to right, and it fills it like that. Too easy. Now if I undo that, say if I extend the line outside the selection, go left to right, you can see that the amount of white is proportionate to the line that I draw, not the fill area. So if I can Control D, even if I start, oops, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, sorry, let's go back in time. Let's load that selection. So if we go the fill all the way from outside here, you can see we get a slightly different effect. I'm not really happy with that because it looks a bit too even. So I'm going to undo that and do gradient fill like that. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. So you notice again this section line work drawing, which is on top. Brilliant, because I can then have that as an overlay, so I can still see the detail behind this gradient fill that I've created. So I'm going to undo that selection and zoom out. So there's an overview of different fill types, some tips and tricks to look out for, and how to use selections and layers effectively. Hope that's been of use to you, and we'll see you for the next video where we're going to start to look at applying colour with lines and brushes.